Welcome to the Raleigh Board of Selectmen meeting for Monday, March 26, 2018, 6:30 p.m. at the Town Hall, 139 Main Street in Raleigh. First order of business, call the meeting to order. We'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, this meeting is being video and audio recorded and televised live on Raleigh Community Media. We have several appointments tonight. The first is 6:30. We have an appointment with Town Council Tom Mullen. We have a 6:50 appointment with the Shellfish Commissioner Ron Nealon. We will have public comment from 7:10 to 7:15. We have an appointment at 7:15 with the Finance Committee Chairman Larry White. And then we'll have general business, old business, and fiscal 19 budgets and some new business. Tom, welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to see you again, Mr. Chairman, members. So I'm here to talk briefly about the FF&E dispute that the town has with Dorr and Whittier, the architects who are doing the new school renovation. FF&E stands for furniture, fixtures, and equipment. And it's not just that that's at issue, it's also what goes under the general category of technology, which think things like laptop computers. We have come to the point where design services are needed in order to help procure FF&E and technology for the new school. And at that point, we got a proposal from Dorr and Whittier to amend their contract and to add something like $140,000 to it. This came as a shock to us, given that we were under the impression that FF&E and technology were included within the base contract. And indeed, our RFP, issued way back when we were looking for an architect, said that both of those were to be included within base services. There was no objection to that in Dorr and Whittier's proposal, and the contract was silent as to any exceptions. On the other hand, Dorr and Whittier points out that while the contract goes into great detail about a number of other items, such as the respects in which the architect will assist the town in putting out bid documents for construction purposes, it is entirely silent as to Dorr and Whittier's responsibilities for procuring educational technology and FF&E. This led to some back and forth in correspondence and a face-to-face meeting a few weeks ago with the chair, myself, Debbie, and Brad Dorr. And Mr. Dorr proposed a compromise, which everyone on our side of the table thought was okay. Not great, but okay. The compromise was that since Advance, which is the subcontractor that is doing the technology piece, would be paid out of Mr. Dorr's pocket, we would pay that up front, and that's about $40,000. But the larger piece, the FF&E piece, is being done in-house by Dorr and Whittier, and they would continue to charge us for that, but we would not pay that piece until the end of the project, and then only out of any funds that are left in the contingency. So basically, Dorr and Whittier was proposing to bear the risk with respect to that $93,000 piece, that maybe the money wouldn't be there, because sometimes the contingency gets eaten up, or it wouldn't all be there. Again, I don't mean to say that this is a great compromise, but then no real compromise ever is. It leaves both sides dissatisfied. And so I recommended this, and I drafted what I believe you've seen, a 2 or 3 page simple amendment that reflects this agreement. Then I got an email from Brad Dorr saying, no, I can't sign that document you produced. And he produced pretty much the same language, but put it elsewhere in his documents. And as best I can see, the difference between his version and mine is that mine recites that there was a genuine issue between us as to who was to pay for FF&E and technology procurement services. And he doesn't want to acknowledge that there was such a dispute. He says instead that he is volunteering this compromise out of, I think he literally said, out of affection for Joe Perry and the town of Rowley. I don't doubt the sincerity of his affections, but we are into this because there is a genuine legal dispute. So I fumed for a few days about this, and then I realized that I ought not to be urging you to do something that is going to put the town at risk and possibly into litigation just because of my own ego and personal pique. At bottom, there is no substantive difference between his draft amendment and my own. The recitals, the whereas clauses that I included are missing from his, and that's where I had the information about there being a dispute. Really, who cares whether we acknowledge there's a dispute or not? It's the operative clauses of the amendment that matter, and those are substantially identical. So that's where we are. I don't want to argue for his position because who knows, you might say no and we'll end up in litigation and I'll be taking a contrary position. And also, I don't think he was right. Again, this is a compromise. But I don't want to get in the way of a deal between the town and its architect. I don't want to slow down a project that is so important and so time sensitive. So I have no problem with your board voting to accept the compromise paperwork that was proposed by Brad Dorr.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any comments?
Yeah, I'll comment first. As you know, Tom, because we talked the other day, I have a problem in terms of, if this was an acceptable deal and the issue was whether we should do a formal settlement agreement or what Brad proposes. I would agree with you, but also say it's not worth fighting over. But that's not what I'm really concerned about. I have a problem with the basic compromise. Number one, I don't regard it as much of a compromise because at the end of the day, it seems likely to me that every penny of the amount that Dorr and Whittier are seeking is going to be paid. Some of it's going to be paid up front, the advance fee, and probably the rest of it will be paid as a contingency. So I don't regard that as much of a compromise, really, especially when you look at the terms of the contract, which you so well went through in your first memo, and reached the conclusion that the services that they're seeking to bill us for are included in basic services. I look at the terms of the contract and I agree with that position. I think it's pretty strong. I think the advance part of it is especially strong because in the contract they specifically named advance and they said, we're not going to bill you for advances services. So I don't see where how they can bill us for this. I think it's included in basic services. I understand the argument you're making that one part of the contract talks about procurement costs and the FF&E and technology consultant parts don't talk about procurement costs. But it seems to me when I look at the billing documentation that procurement costs is only a minor part of what they're seeking for. They broke it down for both the FF&E and the technology services. They broke it down into various categories, and two of those categories are procurement documentation and bidding post-bid services. But there's other categories, kickoff and schematic design, design, development, and selection. So those aren't really related to procurement as far as I can see, and they make up more than half of the money at issue. So, and then when you look at the advanced technology part, they break it down into two parts. The first one they call equipment identification, and the second one is also equipment identification. When you look at Advent's scope of services, it's clear that what they're talking about, they're making a distinction between fixed technology like the public address system, things like that, the wiring for the internet, which they say are included within basic services, and the other, and loose technology, which they say isn't included in basic services. And the part for the fixed technology is only $4,500. The rest is, the loose technology is $40,000. When you look at the contract, I don't see how they make that distinction, because the contract just says technology consultation by Advance. It doesn't make any distinction between the wiring of the building and computers on people's desks. So I just have a hard time accepting this particular compromise, and I think we need to get a better compromise for the town of Raleigh.
Anybody else?
I have to agree with Cliff, somewhat, but I also, the project is very important to move on. I'm in between here.
Bob?
If it works, it works. If not, you have to straighten it out. It's gotta go one way or the other. I just as soon see it go through without any issues, but.
You, Mr. Chairman?
Hmm?
You, Mr. Chairman, how do you, your feelings?
Well, I'm in favor of the compromise.
Okay.
As I said earlier, I'm not going to argue in favor of their position, because I largely agree with everything Cliff says, which is why I regard it as a compromise. But just so you know more of their argument, in addition to pointing out that there's nothing in the agreement that goes into detail about the mechanics of FF&E and technology, they would also say that they identified a particular subcontractor for geotech work. Nonetheless, we acknowledge that geotech work is a proper subject of a separate amendment to the contract. That is, we did not pay, at least for all of the geotech work, maybe any of it, under the base contract price.
How much was that, Tom?
That I don't know.
Okay.
Is that included in basic services? I mean, does it say that geotech work is included in basic services?
I believe it does, yeah.
Well, as you know, Tom, I mean, contract terms, they can't be rendered meaningless or superfluous. Courts will not construe a contract term as meaningless. That's what they try to avoid doing at all costs. I think if we accept what they're seeking here, we've pretty much rendered those terms meaningless, and it's just, you just can't do that in interpreting a contract. I mean, a court will strive to give meaning to every phrase of a contract.
I agree, and arguing in favor of your position, Cliff, I might add that when we had our discussion with Brad Dorr, I asked him, what work would you have done differently if you had believed that FF&E and technology were basic services? And he said, no difference at all. I said, you lost your argument right there. Again, I don't want to make out myself as a proponent of his position. I think he's wrong, but I don't want your board to think that it would necessarily be a slam dunk to win. And I know that you are rightly concerned to avoid litigation, and especially I don't want to be responsible for urging anything that could lead to a delay in something so time sensitive. If we were unable to reach agreement, then where would we be? I would probably insist that Dorr perform these services, albeit under protest, and then he could sue us later for the difference. If he refused to perform, then we could go out to bid. We'd have to go out to bid in a real hurry to find somebody to do this work, and then we would sue Brad Dorr and Whittier after the contract's done for the difference between what we spent and the basic service payment that we thought would include all of FF&E and technology.
And the odds of winning?
Again, I think that we have the better argument, but it is, I'm not all that comfortable, in open session opining on this kind of
Yeah,
thing, but I
we're-
think we have the better argument, but it's not a slam dunk.
Well, I need a motion to go one way or the other.
Well, I make a motion that we reject the compromise proposal.
Second? No second?
I'm still up in the air about between the two of them. I don't want to, delay the project, and I don't want to get into litigation also.
Nor do I,
Yeah,
for either one,
Yeah.
Yeah.
On the other hand, when you're being billed for something that you're not
not,
responsible for paying,
mm-hmm,
most people say, no, I'm not going to pay for that.
yeah. I'll second the motion.
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. We ready for a vote? Okay. All those in favor of Cliff's motion to not,
To reject the
to
compromise.
reject the compromise?
Aye.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm opposed.
So it's 3-1 in favor of rejecting the compromise.
Right.
Okay. Well, I will so inform Brad Dorr tomorrow, and I think our position then has to be that all of this work is included within basic services, and we expect him to perform it forthwith at no extra cost.
Well, I don't think we're precluding you from having further settlement discussions. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Ernie?
How much is the dispute? What's the dollar amount on the dispute?
It's about $140,000.
And what is their share of the contract in just round terms?
What
How much
percentage?
how much revenue are they generating off this contract?
Oh, well, we wouldn't know that.
Don't have a figure.
I mean, it's a big contract, and typically an architect would take around 15% of.
I'm sorry, when you say, I thought you meant what's their profit? And
No. It's the gross.
What's the total value of the contract?
130,000 isn't going to be gross, isn't going to be profit either, so what's their gross?
Total fee would be, with the addition that they're asking for, $3,600,000.
So they're looking at fees of 3.5 million, essentially, plus or minus. And this is 3% of that? I mean, I think strikes me as there's a huge amount of wiggle room there for a compromise that doesn't leave us holding the entire 130,000. I mean, that's just, I agree with Cliff's take on it, for what it's worth.
Okay.
Excuse me, sir,
you
could you open that door, please?
Just leave it
Just
ajar?
a little jar. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thanks, Tom.
thanks, Sam.
Okay, we're right on time. 6:50, we have an appointment with the Shellfish Commissioner, Ron Nealon, to discuss the following: to authorize the sale of the Shellfish Department outboard motor, request from Kevin McCormick to conduct an oyster rearing program, approval to continue the existing aquaculture sites, Clubhead Sands and Hog Island Point, and also the renewal of aquaculture licenses. To my right folder. Okay, why don't we take it one at a time? Authorize the sale of the Shellfish Department outboard motor. What?
The motor is, I couldn't find the year of the make of the motor, but it's got to be around early 2000. It's had a lot of problems. Talked with one of the guys about fixing it, and he says he couldn't really give a price because of some of the corrosion and everything, hour-wise, taking parts off and replacing it, and he said it could just keep going. So we went through the process of purchasing a new motor, and we're just seeking permission to put the old outboard on a sealed bid for starting at 300 and see where it goes from there. So the bids would come here, I believe, be sent here.
Any questions?
Sounds like it served us well since 2000.
It's been,
But it's
and I
old.
think it wasn't a new motor when they got it, so it was used when they bought it, and
Okay.
then it's been used.
I'll make a motion to authorize the sale.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded to authorize the sale of the Shellfish Department outboard motor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, number two, we have a request from Kevin McCormick to conduct an oyster rearing program.
Yeah, could we do the last two first? Those two
Sure.
are gonna be tabled. I didn't get enough information to the state
Okay,
guy, so if we can agree that, I just have to get more information together to submit, then Kevin can give his presentation.
okay. So we'll go down to number three, approval to continue the existing aquaculture sites at the Clubhead Sands in Hog Island Point. And the,
Approval of the aquaculture license,
Yeah.
it's pretty much two of the same things, so it
Okay,
just
we
be
can
tabled
combine the
until
two.
further time.
Mr. Chairman, we were notified today with official communication from the Conservation Commission on those two plan flats that Mr. Nealon just mentioned. And I think we may need to get back to the Conservation Commission
Yeah, and
sooner than Division of Marine Fisheries.
And that wasn't submitted, so I'm not sure how long it'll take for that, so.
The Conservation Commission permits may take a while. That's why I think that maybe if there's a dialogue starting now to find out what exactly needs to be done with the Conservation Commission, because nothing's gonna happen at the Division of Marine Fisheries unless it gets approval from the Concom.
Who would consist of the dialogue?
I would have to talk to Brent, Brent, I'm not sure
Brent.
if it's
Yep,
Brent,
Brent,
and then
yes.
see what his thoughts are on it, and then I would have to contact you guys or talk to Deb about what the next step would be.
Okay.
yeah, we, I should have read it on the bottom, it says, with respect to the Conservation Commission concerns with permitting, we recommend a group be formed with one selectman, shellfish constable Travis Nealon, and a shellfish commissioner, and Brent Bazelak to discuss the licensing progress.
We just thought that may be helpful, so
Yeah.
that the burden doesn't fall on Mr. Nealon if, but it's up to the board. We were just thinking that way everybody's hearing the same thing together and working on a plan. But that's
Do we have
just
a-
an idea.
Have a volunteer?
A volunteer.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
That sound good?
Yes.
Okay.
Do we vote to establish that committee, or?
No, I think it's just, if we have one
Group, yeah.
selectman who's hearing the same things that Mr. Nealon is, that would be helpful so that when they're ready to bring everything forward, we have a selectman that's at least been focused on this particular matter.
I'm good.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
This is Kevin Bowman.
Gentlemen, thanks for having me. What I have proposed is to some of our constituents. There is a small oyster resource in Rowley. It's not a commercial resource. Being not a commercial resource, that means you can't apply for an aquaculture license because those
I
are
believe you.
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I didn't
Sorry.
understand that.
There is a small oyster resource, but it's not a commercial resource.
Okay.
Aquaculture licenses only go to commercial enterprises. Okay? So what I'm asking to do is I am donating everything I have as a marine scientist, which I haven't been active in for a while, but the oysters haven't changed much, and I think we can all agree I haven't changed a bit. So what I'd like to do is work under and with and for the Shellfish Commission to get down to Mud Creek, which is on the Raleigh-Newbury line, and try to capture spat oysters, rear them up in cages to various commercial sizes, and try to get them out into some cleaner water, because that is a runoff issue up in there. That's a hot spot up in there. Get them out in the cages out in Plum Island Sound and try to raise them, bring them up to a commercial status. It's entirely, it has to be propagation. Propagation is only for public enhancement. I wouldn't own anything. At the end of the day, whatever we learned would be for all of us, and whatever oysters were generated would also be for all of us. If we think we can get to some point where this would actually work in oyster farm situations, we'll have to come back, present all our findings, and ask that we change the bylaw so that you could harvest at a rate for that. Then you'd have to go back through aquaculture licensing and go from there. There's no oyster farms out here, but I think you're probably pretty familiar with Wellfleet,
Yep.
Duxbury, I mean, all the way through. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. It's just
But there's none like north of Boston, say, or?
an oyster farm?
Yeah.
No, no. No.
But were these from the area?
Those are from Mud Creek, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I picked those up Saturday. Yeah. You can take 30 per tide, and there's 6 there. Now, I wouldn't recommend eating those on the half shell, because it comes from up in Mud Creek, which has the farm upriver. So there'd be a runoff issue there. I'm sure you could cook them and they'd be fine, but that's the first thing. Everybody wants to tear into them and get the Tabasco sauce. But there is a small resource there. And if you get down the end of Patmos Road and just walk out that trail that the Greenbelt has and just stand there and look down, you'll see them down there. But that would be the perfect place for spat collectors, because that resource is there already. Then beyond that's deep water for cages. Around the corner from that is more deep water and more tidal flushing, more salinity. So if we kept our cages moving out into Plum Island Sound. Now, you're probably wondering how I'm gonna do that in a raft or something like that. I wanna cut the bottom out of an old boat. Put all the gear down inside of that, so nobody would know anything. We put the cover on it, at least try to lock it, try to keep the honest people out. And that way we can move it easy. That way I can experiment from the experimental group that are caged up, and the control group, which is of course the native stock left right there. So we can constantly go back and forth, check growth rates, check salinities, and I can also check some of the fecal coliform counts and things like that. I'm not sure whether DMF is available to do all of that, but I have contacts at Roger Williams University and University of Rhode Island, and so that would be the way to check that. So we'd have to figure that all out. This is the journey of 1,000 miles, and this is step number 2. Step number 1 was walking across the street and talking to Ronnie. So.
Now, a few years ago, we had somebody, professor from Northeastern, if I can remember correctly.
Boston, I think it was Boston University.
Boston University, sorry. I think they're in the heart with Northeastern down there. And she was, if I remember correctly, working on the flats there and looking, what was her particular specialty? Do you remember?
I know there's quite a few scientists down there now, and they're checking, I believe it's how the marsh is receding and how the
Right.
temperature's
Yes.
affected, and the temperatures of the mud and water and salinity through the course of the year. I know that they had a couple of test spots looking for soft shell clams, but I don't think their experiments are to do with
Okay.
oyster or.
Yeah, I don't think it has, yeah.
Do green crabs bother the oysters at all?
They do, not as bad as the soft shell.
Not as soft shell.
Obviously, but still, when they're in that spat stage, they're gonna be very vulnerable.
Okay.
So, that would be the thing, you'd wanna harvest those off. I've come up with, I showed Ronnie, I should have brought it, but I've come up with a way to cement soft shell clams into little blocks of cement. So you could put them down as spat collectors. And that way you could break off the small, about the size of your little fingernail. That way you could break that off of a soft shell clam. Get that into what would be called an upweller, which would force feed them, caged so much, and then try to get them going from there. So that's kind of,
So this, I remember as a kid, we had a place down in Wellfleet, so I remember, going down to the pier many times, my dad in Wellfleet, getting oysters and quahogs and such. So, but I didn't realize they had a farm down there.
Wellfleet's full of them now, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. Wellfleet, Duxbury, Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, Rhode Island, yeah.
Have you approached the Conservation Commission at all for,
This is step number 2. I'm gonna go with the guidance is what you tell me. If we don't go any further than here, that's it. I just start from the Shellfish Commission. They work for you, and we'll go from there, whatever you.
Do we need anything from the state?
No, I don't think at this point, because it's not for profit
Okay.
type thing. He's just trying to see if he, first can catch the baby oyster that started growing, and then see if that's gonna be able to enlarge the natural bed that's there right now. And then the steps that he was talking about as far as moving them out, to check the salinity and different growth rates and stuff like that would come, probably, it's gonna take at least a year.
Yeah. We'd have to learn to winter them over without losing them in the winter. But I, as a private citizen, cannot be in possession of, quote-unquote, juveniles. And I can't be in possession of 100 or 200 or whatever, and can't be in possession of anything in a cage because that's called cooling. That right there is a Bluetooth actuated water temperature data logger. So temperature being the ultimate factor in spawning and everything. There'll be a few of those down there, so all I gotta do is walk down and activate the Bluetooth on my iPad and tell what the water temperature's going.
oh, wow.
So, it's a good site because it has foot access plus boat access.
I
And
didn't,
nobody's up there.
I didn't understand, when I think you said cut the bottom out of an old boat. And
Yep.
Could you explain that a little more? I'm
Yep.
trying to visualize how you do this.
Well, I'm gonna cut the bottom right out of it and make a well in it.
You just need a chainsaw.
Exactly, that's just what it's gonna be. Thanks. And, I'll have a small mast and a boom with a block and tackle, or as we call it, a tackle. And these cages would be about 4 by 2. So pick them up with a rack set up and put them down through the bottom of the boat, down below it, where the tide will be running all the time. Put the cover on it, lock it up. Come back anytime I wanna check them, which is like every day, every other day. Open the cover, pull them back up, turn them sideways, set them there. But it would be a well in a boat, or as we call it in oceanography, a moon pool. But yeah, not just cut the bottom out of a boat, yeah. Yeah, I should have gone a little further on that. Yeah, the boat don't leak, it's just got a hole in it. Yeah. So that's what that would be.
Now, you were
I
saying,
think when he reaches that point, though, we would have to have a license from the state, at least to move that smaller oyster.
because you're talking about juveniles, right?
Yeah, because of the size discrepancy,
Size.
what you can harvest and what has to stay, so
So you mean before you reach that point, you would have to,
we would, yeah, we
need
would
state
have,
approval?
and then it would be a license. But the license for the water aquaculture is easier to get than like the aquaculture for the flats, because it's, stays in water all the time.
How far into the project would that be?
It would probably be a year, I would say.
A year.
At least, yeah.
So it's gonna take quite a while to
Yeah,
get this off the ground.
right, yeah.
It might not even start until next spring, because it may be too late as far as water temperature and spawning of the oyster itself starts this year, based on water temperature and stuff.
What's the water temperature have to be? Just
Right, it's pretty warm, right in the 60s. It's 39 right now.
39?
Yeah, you have to, you want to be starting to think about 50 degrees, and in the 60s is when they'll kick like that. So it's the warmer, you know how they always say oysters with the month of the R? It's because when they spawn, they put every part of their being into spawning. It doesn't mean that they're, the food degradation isn't there, it just means that the animal is so wasted that they're a terrible product, is what it is. And it's right in the middle of the summer that they do that. May, June, July, right in there, right in that, yeah. But when that temperature takes that spike, that's when it's gonna go, so you have to be ready by then. And what Ronnie was saying is, I mean, next week it'll be April, even though it doesn't seem like it. It'll be here, you know. So, but it's gonna take some time. And then we gotta figure out how to get them through the winter.
Yep.
That's gonna be a project all on its own. So, it's just a journey.
Have a motion?
I'll give you that motion
What is the motion for? I mean,
for the,
specifically, I mean,
To include
to-
a request to conduct an oyster rearing program and to include a condition that Mr. McCormick check with the Conservation Commission for any permitting requirements.
okay, I'll second that.
Okay?
Yeah.
All those in favor of the,
Interesting.
yeah. Aye.
I say aye?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
No,
No, that's,
thank you very much.
Bring the Tabasco next time.
Thank you very much.
Ron, I'll be in touch.
Okay,
Okay,
she has my cell phone number.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have general business number 1. We have a request from the Rowley Veterans Association to hold the annual Memorial Day Parade and Ceremony on May 28th, Monday, May 28th, 2018. The Rowley Veterans Association has sent a letter about the annual Memorial Day Parade and Ceremony to be held on Monday, May 28th at 1:30 p.m. The board needs to vote to authorize the parade. Board of Selectmen, Town of Raleigh, Post Office Box 275, 139 Main Street, Raleigh, regarding the Memorial Day Parade 2018. Dear members of the board, as the president of the Raleigh Veterans Association Board of Directors, I hereby request your approval for the annual Memorial Day ceremonies conducted by our organization. The ceremony will take place on Monday, May 28th, 2018, starting at 1:30 p.m. Units participating in the parade will form at 1 p.m. in the parking lot at the Raleigh Veterans Association and then proceed along Bradford and Summer Streets into the town cemetery to the left of Town Hall, crossing onto the rear of the common. We look forward to this annual gathering, which pays respect to our predecessors. We invite you all to attend. Respectfully yours, Steve Morris, President, RVA Board of Directors. Steve?
No, Mom, Dan LaRochelle, Steve's not here,
Oh.
but he's here in case there was any questions or any problems.
Well, we usually have a good time on, it is a day that we honor the veterans who have given their lives to.
Of course, everybody's
Service to the
invited back
country.
to the RVA for cookout afterwards.
We'll enter as we did last year.
Yeah, everything is the same, it's just, we're under new, all new board of directors, new management, so we're kinda new at doing it, so we're, you know, taking baby steps, but I'm sure everything will go off without a hitch. We've
Sure.
already contacted all the band in Triton High School, and everything is all set, so.
Very good.
And have you talked to Karen Tyler at the Veterans?
Yes,
Okay. All right. Yeah, because I know she would like to to be here that
Mhm.
Yep.
day.
Yep. Motion?
I give you that motion.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to hold the annual Memorial Day Parade and ceremony on Monday, May 28th, starting at the Raleigh Veterans Association. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
There's also a copy of that letter sent to the police and fire departments.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So, thank you.
We will have public comment for the next 5 minutes. Okay, let's go on to general business number 2, letter from the United States Department of the Interior regarding Coastal Barrier Resources Systems Boundary Project. The Department of the Interior is requesting written comments on their draft revised boundaries for the Coastal Barrier Resources System, CBRS. The comment period will close on July 10th, 2018. This letter also has been copied to the Harbor Master and the Conservation Commission agent. I got another 2 pages. This Deborah Egan, Town of Raleigh, 139 Main Street, Post Office Box 275, Raleigh, Mass. 01969. Dear Miss Egan, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the service, published a notice in the Federal Register on March 12, 2018, 83 FR 10739, to announce the availability of draft revised boundaries for 148 units of the Coastal Barrier Resource System, CBRS, 112 existing units, and 36 proposed new units, located in Delaware, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and New Jersey for public review and comment. The proposed boundaries were produced through the first batch of a multi-year effort funded by the Department of the Interior to comprehensively modernize the maps of the CBRS for 9 states affected by Hurricane Sandy. This project makes significant progress toward fulfilling a statutory requirement, Section 4 of Public Law 109-226, to modernize the entire set of CBRS maps and make recommendations to Congress for the expansion of the CBRS. The proposed boundaries are accessible via the CBRS project's mapper at https://www.fws.gov/CBRA/mapper.html. Additional information related to the proposed changes and instructions for providing comments and participating in the virtual public meeting are available at https://www.fws.gov.cbra/maps/hurricane-sandy-project.html. The Coastal Barrier Resources Act of 1982, CBRA, 16 U.S.C. U.S. Code 3501 at
Sequence.
sequence, established at the CBRS, which is a defined set of geographic units located along the Atlantic, Gulf of Mexico, Great Lakes, in U.S. Virgin Islands, and Puerto Rico coasts. Congress enacted the CBRA to minimize the loss of human life, reduce wasteful federal expenditures, and minimize damage to the natural resources associated with coastal barriers. Most new federal expenditures and financial assistance that would have the effect of encouraging development are prohibited within the CBRS. The CBRA does not prohibit development and it imposes no restrictions on development conducted with private, state, or local funds. Development can still occur within the CBRS, provided that the private developers or other non-federal parties bear the full cost. The Secretary of the Interior, through the service, is responsible for administering the CBRA, which includes maintaining and updating the official maps of the CBRS. Aside from 3 minor exceptions, only Congress, through new legislation, can modify the maps of the CBRS to add or remove areas. We invite you to review the proposed boundaries and provide input to the service during the 120-day public comment period that will close on July 10th, 2018. You may submit written comments by one of the following methods. Public comment is now over. Thank you. Electronically, go to the federal e-rulemaking portal, http://www.regulations.gov. In the search box, enter FWS-HQ-ES-2018-0004, which is the docket number for this notice. Then on the left side of the screen, under the document type heading, click on the notices to locate this document and submit a comment. By hard copy, submit by U.S. mail or hand delivery to Public Comments Processing. Attention, docket number FWS-HQ-ES-2018-0004. Division of Policy, Performance, and Management Programs, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, 5275 Leesburg Pike, Mississippi, BPHC, Falls Church, Virginia, 22041-3808. We will hold public meetings via webcast and teleconference. The meetings will be held on May 8th, 2018 for Delaware and New Jersey, and May 9th, 2018 for Massachusetts and New Hampshire at 10 a.m. To ensure that enough call-in lines are available, we request that participants register by emailing cbra@fws.gov by close of business May 1st, 2018. Excuse me. The service is notifying over 600 stakeholders, including members of Congress, governors, federal, state, and local officials, and non-governmental organizations in the affected areas to inform them of the opportunity to provide comments on the proposed boundaries and participate in virtual public meetings. Additionally, a stakeholder outreach toolkit comprised of project fact sheets, flyers for the virtual public meetings, a Dear Interested Party version of this letter that can be further distributed at the community level, and other information about the project will be made available on request. Local officials are encouraged to use this toolkit to increase awareness of the project and the virtual public meetings within the community. To obtain this toolkit, please email cbra@fws.gov. Following the close of the comment period, we will review all comments received on the proposed boundaries and make adjustments to the boundaries as appropriate. Based on the information received through public comments, updated aerial imagery, CBRA criteria, and objective mapping protocols. We will then prepare final recommended maps to be submitted to Congress. The final recommended maps will become effective only if they are adopted by Congress through legislation. We look forward to your input and involvement in this important process. Again, please provide any comments concerning the proposed boundaries by the close of comment period on July 11th, 2018. If you have any questions concerning this matter, please contact Ms. Martha Bayless Larson, Chief, Division of Budget and Technical Support, at 703-358-2171. Sincerely, Gary Frazier, Assistant Director for Ecological Services. Okay. Bernie?
Can anybody say what the implications are for Raleigh of this? And who in Raleigh would be focusing on this?
Well, as it says in the letter, the only implication anywhere is that federal funding can't be used for the development of these units. So I don't know how many of our developments are federally funded anyway. As far as I know, none are. But though I don't know what specific areas of Raleigh that they're talking about. But
Yeah.
it's something I
I
guess
have no idea.
I would think the Conservation Commission would know that.
That's why,
Look into
Mr.
it.
Chairman, we did send it to the Harbor Master and the Conservation Commission. We really think probably Brent will look at this, look at the maps, and report back at some point what his recommendation would be, if anything.
It sounds like the impact would be mostly right, direct, coastal.
I don't think so. It's probably in our flood zone anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Out on, there's maybe something out on,
Yeah.
I'm thinking Stackyard Road or
Oh,
someplace
yeah.
way out there that Brent would be aware of
Right.
anyway.
I'm thinking, I was thinking more of someplace like Chatham or, where it's direct.
oh, right, it could be, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I
Plum
remember.
Island or whatever.
Plum Island or
Yeah,
something. I mean,
sure.
Okay. We have a 7:15 appointment with Finance Committee Chairman Larry White to discuss the fiscal year 19 Triton assessment. The Finance Committee voted to recommend funding the fiscal year 19 Triton budget by adding $200,000 to the fiscal year 18 assessment for a total of $9,822,873. The town's commitment of $200,000 is approximately half of the estimated Prop 2.5 levy in new growth. There also will be an article on the annual town meeting warrant right after the fiscal year 19 budget article, appropriating the balance of the Triton assessment through an override. Chairman Larry White is here to discuss this item in more detail. Larry, the floor is yours.
Well, you took away all my thunder, so. But basically, the Finance Committee unanimously voted to approve the fiscal year 18 budget with a $200,000 increase for fiscal 19. With the override of $532,000. It's basically what Triton has requested. Our operating assessment is $732,000. That's where we come up with those numbers. So if both the budget and the override pass, then Triton gets their full assessment. And obviously, you have to come up with $532,000 worth of budget cuts or whatever. If it doesn't pass, if the budget passes and the override doesn't, then Triton has to come up with a new budget. So we're unanimously in support of the lower budget and the override, and the town can decide via vote how they want to do the whether they approve the override or not. That's basically it.
So is the committee, so are you saying that the committee is going to support a yes vote on the override, or you're not making that the
We're not making that determination. We're not recommending it. When we come to the actual warrant articles, we might have an opinion on it. Right now, we've come up with the town administrator and everybody else with a format that at least is understandable to Rowley as far as what is going on. They're not voting on budget A versus budget B like we did several years in the past. The budget will show the Triton request for their money, and then the Finance Committee recommendation, which will be less than what the Triton request is. But that difference will be made up in the next article, Article 4, with the override. So if the budget and the override passes, then Triton gets their full assessment request.
If the Finance Committee recommendation passes and the
Yes.
override passes, then Triton gets their whole request. Right?
Right.
So if the budget passes but the override fails, it depends what the other two towns do, right?
Yes. The other
So-
two towns, if they pass, and both towns, Newbury and Salisbury, will be having overrides. So their format will be similar to ours.
So if those other.
Both of those towns pass, then we will be saddled with the increased budget. If two of the three towns don't pass the override, then depending upon what budget each of the three towns have, as far as Triton, Triton will have to come up with a new budget, but it'll be based somewhere, we'll say, between what the three towns' budgets are for Triton at the reduced rate.
It's my understanding, being at one of the school committee meeting, that the school committee, as a contingency, should two of the three towns fail to pass the override or fail to pass the budget, that they have set a meeting date of May 16th to set a new, I don't know if I would call it a new, but to vote on a budget
Yes.
and to recertify that to the towns.
And they have been exploring what they call a Plan B, but also they have also hinted that there's a Plan C, D, and E that they are thinking about. So no one is, I think, sure on what things are going, or how things are going to happen. And what I've seen with all three towns is that every town thinks that the override will not pass in their town, but they're very concerned that the other two towns will pass an override and that they will be saddled with a budget that they cannot support without significant layoffs. And they're talking fire, police, DPW, library, just as we would be.
And our override will be, what, 532,000?
532,000.
And the override for Salisbury, I heard, was approximately $800,000.
800,000. Their assessment is, I think, 878,000 in that neighborhood. Newbury, their assessment, I think, is around 500,000. They're looking for $359,000 override. So each town is planning an override. Some of them are planning to override for the full amount. Others are saying that we can support some of the increase with the Proposition 2.5 increase in new growth. But Salisbury is basically saying they need the money for other things, and they're going for almost a full override.
I did go to the budget hearing at the Triton High School library, and there were several parents that spoke, and they asked that they would be allowed to vote their preference, in that they would hope that the override would be on the ballot. And I spoke up that night, and as an individual with only one vote, but hopefully with the support of the board, and that promised that an override would be on the ballot, and we are putting an override on for the town of Raleigh.
Right, and it's basically going to be up to, the voters whether they can support additional increases on top of the Pine Grove School renovation and the police and fire
Correct.
and Triton.
And again, we do want to point out that the fiscal year 19 bills will be coming out in July, and that we haven't seen the increases yet for the Pine Grove renovation or the police fire station.
Right. I also noticed, I was watching in Salisbury, the Whittier school committee meeting, and they had a decrease in enrollment, and as a result, they had a decrease in their operating costs. So there are some schools that can figure out that when your enrollment goes down, your operating costs don't keep skyrocketing. Personal opinion.
Any comments, questions?
Well, I don't know, I'm just wondering if Whittier has the same special education burden that Triton does. I mean, we all agree, I think we're all talking about how special ed costs are a big driver of this increase, so.
Very big
Just
driver.
one thing, when you said that, it made me wonder if you can compare the two, I don't know.
I don't know. I would imagine they would have similar special education
Well, I don't know.
costs or whatever, but granted, the state imposes stipulations on Triton, but it's the same state that's also imposing on Raleigh, Newberry, and Salisbury other regulations that are unfunded mandates. So we all suffer from the state.
How, Larry, again, how much would be the override in Salisbury?
Their assessment is $878,000, and they are looking for an override of around $800,000. They should be voting on it tonight, although it wasn't on the schedule. I don't know how they're.
The Finance Committee, the Salisbury
No,
Finance.
this is the Selectmen.
Oh,
Board of
okay.
Selectmen, yeah. But we also have to take into account too that Whittier is only a regional high school, so that they would only be dealing with students from grades 9 through 12.
Right.
And not having to deal with elementary through middle school. Any other?
So to just be clear on this, we would go to town meeting and vote on the override at town meeting and then on the ballot, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
Is that,
And
So it
at
has to-
town meeting, when you vote on the budget, you're actually voting on the finance committee recommended
Recommended.
budget, not the fiscal 19 budget.
So it has to pass in both
Right,
the town meeting and the ballot.
right. But we'll say you wouldn't want to increase the whole town budget because we'll say, make up the difference between that and what the finance committee recommends. And there's only one article so far where there's a difference. Because the next article takes into account that difference. So you would approve, we'll say, the budget in Article 3, and then approve the override in Article 4, and then Triton gets their total that they've requested.
Do the other two towns, do they have their town meetings after us or before?
Newbury is
After
before.
us.
Before.
No, Newbury is first.
Are they first?
Yep. We're right, April 30th, and Newbury is April
24th.
24th.
They were really
And
early this year.
then Salisbury is the last
Yeah.
on May 15th.
Salisbury's after their election. Newbury and Rowley are before the election, and Newbury's doing the same thing on their warrant that we're discussing this evening.
Bernie?
What happens if the Article 4 gets turned down at town meeting? In other words, the notion of the override gets rejected.
If the budget article was approved, then that becomes the de facto budget with the, basically, for Triton, it becomes the budget that was approved this year with a $200,000 increase.
Right.
Which is what,
But what he's saying is that the next warrant article is to approve the
override, right, if
for
that's defeated.
572,000.
Right, if
What
that's-
if that fails at town meeting? That warrant article?
Mr. Chairman, that warrant article, it has the action of appropriating money, provided that the following week it passes, so.
And
it
the
gives you
override
that
ballot.
appropriation ability, so that either way, you're not reconvening another town meeting. If the finance committee's plan goes forward, you're approving a budget that's balanced with the additional $200,000 for Triton, above and
Right.
beyond the FY18 amount. The following article appropriates, so if you pass the override the following week, but you haven't appropriated it, you're gonna have to go back to town meeting. That's why that article, which immediately follows the budget, gives the ability to balance the budget should the override the following week pass, because even if you pass it at the ballot, you still need the legislative action of appropriating it.
Appropriating the
And
funds.
that's why this plan would accommodate that without reconvening another town meeting for this purpose. You know, if there's a new school committee budget, well, that's a different story.
Your name?
Ben Day, 34 Pleasant Street. What happens if the town rejects the finance committee's proposed budget, perhaps in favor of allocating more money to Triton and reducing the amount requested in an override?
They could,
You're
they
cutting the
could,
budget.
they could move to set a different, make a motion for a different number on the, for the Triton District assessment.
Well, Mr. Chairman, then you wouldn't have a balanced budget, so you would be cutting the budgets that
Right.
Mr. White is talking about right now.
Right. It would
Other bu-
require
other-
us to, as the town, to cut other areas of the budget. We'd have to, we would be cutting fire and police and whatever in order to get our budget back within the bounds of what the total amount has been set on the warrant.
Hopefully we've worded it such that you can pass the Finance Committee recommended budget, which is $532,000 below Triton's request, and then pass the override, which gives Triton the full amount that they've requested. Now,
They get their full, their full increase to us is 732,000.
Right.
So in the, under the Finance Committee's proposal, we're going to put in $200,000. That's there. And then we're going to have the override for 532,000. So if the override passes, they get their entire.
Understood. And to clarify, I think what I'm considering here is the optics of an override and the amount of 500,000 plus, as opposed to the optics of an override in the neighborhood of, I think 300,000 was roughly what Newbury was voting on. So, I guess my question here is, should it be decided that it's more favorable to those in favor of funding the proposed Triton budget to have a smaller override amount, and that then would, inversely lead to a larger than proposed allocated amount in the budget? Can that be
Larger
done?
than 200,000.
Right.
Talk about raising the $200,000 to
Right.
some higher figure and lowering the override.
Yeah. I'm just,
that certainly is possible and can be proposed. However, the selectmen back in December, January, wrote a letter to Triton and said, this is what Rowley proposes as far as what we can afford. And typically, the Triton school budget, Triton and the other schools get about 55 to 60% or 55% of the total Rowley budget. So the town is proposing that 200,000 for the Prop 2.5 increase plus new growth, and reserving the other 200,000 for the other departments' needs and stuff like that. In particular, like we're trying to hire 2 new firemen, doing some other things, stuff like that would eat into that. Certainly, there was like a B proposal that the school had that basically took all of our new growth and Proposition 2.5 money. But it's the Triton School District is looking after the school. The selectmen are looking not only at the school, but the fire, the police, the library, health, everything else. So there has to be some money set aside for those other departments. And so the more that you take from what we recommend, or what the selectmen recommended, the less is available for the rest of the town.
Best way to put this, our budget is about $17 million, okay? So we start to divide the pie up here at the table. We start going down in our liabilities, and we come down, we get about, for that 17 million, about 2 million, okay? These are all rough figures, but 2 million to run the town, between fire, police, and this building, and library, and everything else. You just start slicing that down, and you really got about $1 million to run the town. So you can see what the impact of $200,000 is, and what it will do to the town if we fall short. It's devastating to us, you know?
Understood. Understood. There's, that seems to be going around.
Believe me, when we, three of us here have been chairman, so you have to sit here and put this budget together. And it's, your stomach's in a knot for about 10 weeks as you put this together. And then you look and town is growing, we need 2 firemen. You know, and there's other needs to the town. So, and I understand Triton's position too, but, you know, the town has to survive, because we're the source of the revenue for Triton.
You have a town like Salisbury that their assessment is $878,000, and they're looking for an override of around $800,000. So, you know, they realize that they have certain costs that they're going to have to cover. And Neil Harrington has a very good video that he addresses to Salisbury on the state of Salisbury and his recommendations on it. And you know, we're all in the same boat, but that just means that we're all sinking, and we have to do something to save ourselves. You know, there's no comfort in knowing that the 3 people around you drown and you're still alive, but drowning. And you know, we can't look to the state for any type of bailout soon. We have to come up with something right now.
I've been sitting here for 10 years, and it's always been, where's the state? Where's the state? Where's the state?
Just to identify too, that Mr. Neil Harrington is the town manager for Salisbury.
So to clarify, so Salisbury's not putting any 2.5 or new growth into the budget. They're going for an override for the whole thing.
For just about
Almost
the
the
whole
whole
thing,
thing.
yes.
What is Newbury doing in terms of how big their override is compared to, we're putting in 50% of our new growth, plus
They're doing
2.5?
similar. They're very similar.
Yeah.
They're gonna recommend the override.
Yeah, I read 4 of the 5 selectmen are in favor of an override.
Well, the article that's going to be after the budget, Mr. Chairman, if I may, will ask for a recommendation from the selectmen by putting it in there and having the finance committee recommend that should this money be voted on at the May 8th election, it will be appropriated on April 30th. So that's the key, I think, piece of this. It allows that money to be appropriated in advance of the election, which is the same way that the same process they're following.
Yeah, I don't think the $200,000 figure was set in stone. So could that be made higher without causing layoffs for the other side of town, or no?
You mean for Rowley?
Yeah, for Rowley.
Well, if we only have $400,000 in the 2.5 levy and the new growth from the property tax, which is what we rely on and we
We
have,
give them
Yeah,
50%.
no, I'm just wondering.
there's been a request from the Council on Aging to increase the outreach worker,
Planning board,
and
fire.
the planning board, and 2 firefighters.
Right.
There's nowhere, that's what you're looking at.
Yeah.
And we had to go to the voter, last year, for the fire station. And it was the last year, the year before, I forget.
Last year.
And then we had.
No, 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years
And last
ago.
year was.
Last year was
for
the Pine
school.
Grove.
Renovation.
For the renovation. And our, basically, our infrastructure is falling apart in the town. And, I mean, we showed the public what the fire station looked like down in the basement, and, we have somewhere close to $2 million, I would say, $1.5 million worth of equipment, probably $2 million worth of equipment, in an old pool hall from 1880. So we desperately needed, to upgrade the fire station, and the police station basically was, a bunch of trailers in that little Pizza Hut building, so.
And even now, I mean, it gets to the point that a simple project like using the second floor of the town hall annex seemed to be a very innocuous, won't cost too much money type of a thing. And then when you get into the putting in an elevator, all the ADA requirements.
ADA requirements,
And
yes.
then the requirement that the renovation is more than 30% of the cost of the building, so you have to renovate the whole building. For a simple thing of trying to use the second floor, it's $1.1 million, and not worth it.
Yep.
Well, if it wasn't for the CPA fund, I mean, none of that historic renovation would ever be done. And a couple on the town hall, the windows, I mean, you can go down a long list, none of that would be done.
Right.
Again, the reason we had to do that, our infrastructure is falling apart. This building's 1905. It's over a century old.
Mr. Chairman, what we're talking about are increases in the operation of the town, and I think that the department heads that I brought up, especially the Council on Aging, has seen, we can look, the population growth of baby boomers we're looking at, they start services at 60 years old. The outreach worker has not changed. It's 7 hours a week, and the complexity of the work that position is responsible for needs to change. We've said every year to level fund. The fire chief has been in here for 10 years asking for new firefighters, and this budget will address that, and he's stressing it because he's saying that there could be some retirements. So, and the other department is the planning department, and there's so much more than just planning involved there. There's meetings for affordable housing with the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission, the North Shore Home Consortium, and Peabody. And there's things that he can be working on, but at 22 hours a week, it's impossible to work on all that. So I think in this budget, I'm advocating for especially with these departments, and the police department, they're looking for that sergeant position once again. And this is a time where these needs are so important on the municipal side, yet every year the 2.5 levy and the new growth are not being put into this budget, and I think this is a fair compromise.
I've been on the board for, I'm just finishing up my 7th year, and it was funny that when I took out papers just before I started to run for the Board of Selectmen, that they cut the budget. We get a stipend of $2,200 a year, and they cut the stipend down that year because we had to make cuts across the board.
10%. I was the chairman. 10%, we cut it.
10%. And then every year, we put out budget guidelines. And every single year that I've been on the board, the guideline for expenses has always been level funded. We haven't allowed any increases for the town.
Yeah, and I appreciate
tough.
that, Joe. I will say this, and I made this comment to Brian at the school committee too. The managers that we have running things, I have tremendous respect for, and I think it's clear year over year the attention that's paid to detail, the efforts that people go to make $1 out of 15 cents. So don't mistake that.
No,
I guess what I'm concerned with here is we get one chance to put our kids through school here, right? We're here for a reason. And I can empathize, of course, with needs on the other end of the age spectrum and in the municipal realm too. But it's a unique challenge we have in terms of funding the schools, in that we have to ask for an opt-in, right, from the voters. They have to actively opt in. Whereas in the budget, it's been composed and it's a sign off, and there's a number of reasons for that, and it makes sense and so on, but it really disadvantages the cause of investing in the schools to the extent that those managers believe, is needed. So what I'm asking for here is just, should the town say, we have a better chance of passing this override if we can get it to a smaller additional amount? Logistically, how does that work? And I don't want to put everybody back through another budgeting cycle. I know it's painful. I have to do that at work, and I don't want to. But ultimately, at some point, it becomes important enough to dig in. And I hope we don't have to.
I sympathize. I mean, everybody wants to give their children the very best education they can get, okay? But what we can afford, I mean, it's like anything else in life. We look at what we have for money, okay, and we decide we're going to buy a Cadillac, or we're going to buy a Chevy, or we're going to buy, something in between. It depends on how much money you have. And the town is the revenue source.
And basically, when you take a look at the last 3 years, just, I focused on there in looking at the requests from the Triton. We're pretty consistent with our Prop 2.5 increase in our new growth. And it averages around 400,000, maybe a little bit more some years. And in the last 3 years, we have had a Prop 2.5 increase of $1,200,000. And our Triton assessments over the last 3 years have been almost $1.5 million. So they've gone well beyond our entire assessment. And we just can't keep going that way. It's impossible to fund.
I mean, we're going to go into free cash. You go beyond what your revenues are. And we will go into a crisis someday, and we won't be able to pull ourselves out. And I don't know what happens at that point. So I think you know, look at us as we're trying to give a warning, and I don't know if anybody's listening.
Bernie?
Right, I mean, this is the third year I've kind of paid strict attention to the budget. Each time, as Joe just described, the budget has been way beyond Proposition 2.5. The school committee and the school administration knows going in what that parameter is. And each time the budget comes out and it's way beyond that parameter. And not only that, the negotiation for the contract, because it's not only this year, it's next year as well. So there is increases by the contract for salaries that will break the budget again next year. So
And the year after.
And the year after.
Fiscal year 19.
There's
and
already
fiscal
$1 million
fiscal year
in the
20.
budget for wages for increases for next year, and $1 million for the year after, for 20 and 21.
So those are kind of, those are the major issues. So on the one hand, the argument is is well articulated. On the other hand, the history is that the school administration hasn't responded to the reality that they are confronted with. So we've seen enrollments declining year over year. For the last 10 years, the enrollments have declined. They're continuing to decline. At the same time, the budget is moving in excess of our increase, Proposition 2.5, in the other direction. And so in a certain sense, although I understand the optics of reducing it to below 500,000, I would argue for increasing it, because up to this point, the fiscal discipline that I would expect, and you would probably expect in your own business, is not manifest within the school department. It just isn't, because otherwise you wouldn't have had contracts negotiated the way they did, and you wouldn't be coming to the towns with budgets which are way in excess of their ability to fund. So this isn't any issue about the children. The issue is really, who are you going to pay? Are you going to pay the town workers who are scheduled to only get 2.5% increases? That's the whole cost of living and and the step increases, as opposed to the 7% plus cost of living and step increases that the teachers get. It's that straightforward, that clear cut in my mind about what this issue is about. And the school committee and the school administration has to step forward on it and own it, because they're the ones, they're the drivers. We're not the drivers, we're the recipients. Because if two towns say yes, we're stuck. So the game playing is, there's no kind of joint enterprise here at all, as far as I can see.
Yeah, and I definitely understand the comparison. At the same time, there's a little bit of dissimilarity that, in fairness should be called out, right? One is that our town workers and the municipal services and so on were never underwritten in any part by state funding formulas, whereas the school is. And as that decreases, naturally the burden shifts onto the municipality out of no malfeasance on the part of the school committee or the administrators.
Well, I don't agree, because at the margin is each 3 years the teachers get a new contract. And that's the margin. And the reality of the state's funding has been constant. It's been slipping, but it's constant. At the margin, sorry, it's constantly slipping, but by small amounts.
But the state funding has been horrendous. 15 years ago, we got 8.6 million. Now, 15 years later, we get 8.3 million, $300,000 less in 15 years.
But the
Where are the
enrollment drops,
increases?
so the less
Yeah, but-
students you have, the less they're gonna give you. So if your district's growing, you're gonna get more.
As chairman of the board, 3 of them here, 2 passed, sitting here doing contracts with the town, with the fire and the police and the town people. We negotiate, and the thing is, how much money do we have? That's where we start. What can we afford? I'm looking at Triton this year, and I'm trying to scratch my head. Nobody came and asked how much money we have.
The difference too is that we're trying to hire people. We have trouble filling positions simply because in our health insurance, we only pay 52.5. The employee pays 47.5. And the Triton district offers a bigger difference in that. And it makes it so hard.
Plus dental insurance.
Plus dental. And it makes it hard for us to go out and get qualified individuals to fill positions. People don't want to apply for positions in the town because we're limited as to what we can offer for salary and what we can offer for health benefits. It makes it very difficult.
I have said this since I've been on. We run a real lean, mean organization here. We're very frugal. I've used those words for the past 10 years, but we are, to run the town.
What's the board's position on the override? Support or not?
I don't think we have any choice. If we don't get the vote at the town meeting, we've got to.
Well, based on the Finance Committee recommendation, they're putting in the fiscal year 18 numbers, plus the $200,000, and then we're going to have the override to give the Triton the full assessment. That takes care of the whole equation, if the override passes.
Right, but typically on the warrant, there's a note about the board's position, and,
I don't think
We
we've
haven't
taken
had
that
that
vote
vote
yet. It has to come up real quick because we have to get that in print.
It's going to come down to the taxpayer. What is the taxpayer going to do? It's their money, and
Understood.
they're going to look at their wallet, and they're going to look at their house and how they're running their house and say, can I afford this? That's what it's really going to come down to.
My family will too.
Yep.
I guess the reason I ask is, again, in the interest of, working within the constraints we have and still lending the support that costs little to nothing in the way of an endorsement, I think that'd be worth considering.
Well, I think we should definitely consider it,
Okay.
and I agree with you in the sense that I think it's important to the people in town as to what the selectmen are recommending and what the other town boards are recommending, finance, other committees and boards, so I think that's always a big factor in a town meeting vote, and so I think we should.
Well, I've been very involved with them.
We should, have a vote on that, and
We do. We will.
And
We will.
I think the taxpayer is gonna look at this and say, how much am I gonna pay this year? How much am I gonna pay next year? And the year after? They're gonna look at these 3 years coming up, because there's a lot on the
It's gonna be
table
tough.
here that they're gonna have to come up with.
But also you have to consider the people that might be selling their houses or moving into Rowley.
Mhm.
That there are two things that are not really gonna change if they buy a house in Rowley, and that's your mortgage payment
Mhm.
and your real estate taxes. And, you can conserve on water, conserve on electricity. You can't conserve on real estate taxes.
No.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's there, and when I was looking for houses, my gosh, I looked at what the real estate taxes were, because I knew that there was nothing I could do about it.
no.
I've been very, very involved with the Pine Grove School renovation. And it wasn't by myself, and I will freely admit that it was with the support of the PTA, of the Raleigh Pine Grove parents, that we worked very hard to get the override for the school, and we got the override for the police and fire station. We've asked an awful lot of the town voters to come up with the money, the $39 million for the Pine Grove School renovation, and the $12 million for the, approximately $12 million for the police fire station build, which we desperately need. But you just can't keep hitting people with an increase. And even if we could adjust it somehow, so that, I think that giving 50% of our new growth and Prop 2.5 is a reasonable amount. But even if we were to give more and reduce that override amount, it's still an override, and it's still an increase in taxes. And I think it's asking an awful lot of people, considering what we've asked them to do in the last 2 years. It's been a lot.
And it might be different if we knew that next year we're not gonna have the same problem, but I think we all agree we are gonna have
We're
the
gonna
same
have the
problem.
same
and
problem.
the year after as well, so it's very difficult.
Right.
Okay. All set?
Thank you.
I have a
Thank
comment.
you. Yes.
Brian DePersia, 500 Weathersfield. I think to your point, Mr. Pierce, if we know that there's an anticipated year after year, increase or issue, what as a town can we do to be creative and innovative to try to bring in more revenue to the town? So not everything is a taxpayer-based fallback.
Well, we're always thinking about that. The planning board is a board in town that really handles growth issues, and it's very amenable to development. And I would say if you go back over the last 2 decades, you'll see we brought a lot of growth into town, and much more than other towns around us, like Newbury, for example. The Board of Selectmen voted for a new hotel tax, for a
Meals
meals
tax.
tax, and we will vote for a marijuana tax, I believe. So there are other sources of revenue that will be coming in. We're also considering possible zoning changes to commercial zoning that might generate some additional revenue, although I'm not too optimistic about those for a lot of reasons, but I think we're doing what we can in that regard.
We have to be innovative. We need to really look at the commercial side of property and develop it. And there's a double-edged sword here. everybody moves to Raleigh because it's this wonderful little rural community, and they don't want, you know, the any kind of blight, and I can understand that. But we gotta have some kind of a balance. We need revenue, and we just can't continue on, because I don't see the schools, you know, saying, okay, you know, we'll meet some sort of a compromise here. I don't see that happening. But again, I'm a little sour about it, because I've been here 10 years, sitting here, you know, and looking for some sort of compromise, and I haven't seen it. Okay, I was chairman of the board. I had to bring everybody in town up to the second floor and tell them, cut your budgets 2.5%. And boy, did they squawk. And I said, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to cut 2.5% of your budget, everyone. That's not, and, you know, and each one of us, we sit at this table, do the budget. It's really difficult.
If I could
Jim,
be.
I just want
Yes.
to point out, so in May of 2007, a general operational override passed of 590,000. And so that was successful. It's a little bit more than what we're looking for today, but that was about 10 years ago.
And
It did
if I
pass.
could be allowed one further comment, that I started out, I graduated from Salem State University, and I taught mathematics at the junior high level for 15 years. And I left teaching in 1980. And today, this classroom has changed quite a bit. The teachers are dealing with a different type of student. They're dealing with more students with more needs, and the special needs are real, and they are a big part of the budget. And I wish that, you know, another wish would be to have the state pick up. We don't mind funding the educational part of that need, but, you know, the state should pick up the medical part of that need. But the needs have changed tremendously, and I recognize that fact, very much so.
And I understand that, you know, I understand that the state, you know, is not stepping up. And if the state's not stepping up, then the schools in the town have to come together and say, we're being, you know, the budget's being cut all the time. But we have to come up with a realistic number in order to keep the schools going and the towns going. And we gotta work together to do that.
Marissa?
I could just make 2 points, if I could. One, I expect full disagreement on this, but the $1 million number that everybody keeps coming up with as far as personnel, the COLA goes down next year. Our estimate on column changes is about 4 to 5 times what it usually is, so it's way above what the average is. And I'd like to point out that that's not the overall expenditure, because we have techniques like using the PEC. Last time we were able to take a net decrease, so as those years come up, which is next year, I can't say for sure we'll see a decrease on that, but I know that the personnel.
Marissa, can you expand on the PEC?
Yeah, sorry, that's the healthcare organization.
Okay,
So I think
thank
the town does it the same way, right? It's basically a member of each of the unions, and then a retiree and a one more person. I can't remember who it is.
I just wanted people at home to
Yes.
understand. Thank you.
Yep, absolutely. So when you see increases in some areas, you can, you know, there's gonna be there will likely be decreases in other areas. And because our special education increases have skyrocketed this year, we'd expect to see some additional circuit breaker, which is the special ed reimbursement, based on that next year. So, you know, I understand everybody's throwing out, there's gonna be $1 million, $1.5 million. I keep hearing this number over and over again. I just wanna say that's not a set in stone number. And then my other challenge, I'm sorry?
It was in the budget driver memo, 960,000.
For this year, yeah, for this year. I'm just saying, for next year, because I keep hearing this about fiscal '20, that there's gonna be this automatic, you know, number that's in there. That's not an overall increased amount necessarily, because that number is typically much lower. So we saw a similar number 2 years ago, I believe, but because it was a PEC year again, because that's every 3 years that we have to go back to the table, we saw a significantly smaller increase than that. So that's not a set in stone number. I think it was, I don't, you may have the number in front of you, but I think it was like 650,000, if I remember correctly, that year. And then the other thing I wanted to say, which I've heard again and again, and I want to put it out there, we're not getting any help from the state this year. I've heard a lot of people say that. We need to keep going after the state. I almost feel like it's apathy, like we've given up, and we can't do that. And that's just my charge this year. I feel like the state is where we have to go. That's where I've been focusing my attention, and you know, I would appreciate the support, because I feel like if we don't go for the state, if this isn't the year, and next year isn't the year, and last year isn't the year, when is the year that we really put the state in our targets and go after that funding?
I keep seeing the state back off every year. They keep backing off, and local government picks up the tab.
Mm-hmm. And I agree, but the Foundation Budget Review Commission came in 2 years ago. The recommendations are in there this year. It's being pushed very strongly by a number of very strong senators and representatives. I was in the House Ways and, or the Joint Ways and Means Committee on a hearing on education and local aid. It was a week ago today. Senator Chang Diaz and Senator Jelen went right after Secretary of Education Pizer. He pointed out, or he said that there was a plateau, and largely blamed that on very specific groups, and they went right after and said this is because funding is not standing up to what the state needs. So clearly those senators who are making a lot of those decisions, and the other people that are on that committee, are understanding that. They're getting that in a way that hasn't been understood before, I think.
I think we've both had conversations with representatives and senators who have lent their support outright to S-217 and fund the basics initiatives. So there are advocates in the state that, you know, and Narissa's really been mobilizing folks behind them. So I will say this: everybody who's lending support to the override is cognizant of the limits that families face, because we're one of them, right? And a key component in the message here is we know we can't do this every year, right? And pushing, you know, forward with correcting some of the funding formulas at the state level is a huge component in the contingency plan to not have to do this again next year, right? So, something to bear in mind.
Definitely, I agree. Bernie?
Right, I just want to clarify, I mean, it's absolutely correct that the cost of living increase this year, next year is going to be below what it was this year. It's going to go from 2.75% down to 2.5%. In the meantime, the town is essentially 1.1%. So that's baked in for the future, because that's the new base. And so those increases, there is a dramatic difference between the way the town runs its expenses and the way the school has. And what I'm personally looking for is an indication that the school is actually going to change. And I haven't, for 3 years, I haven't seen that, any indication of that change. And that change basically means saying, if the towns can only afford 1%, then perhaps that's what we should be negotiating about. But I don't hear anything along those lines at all. So all we can project is what past behavior predicts, which is we're going to continue to be faced with the employees in the town getting 2 to 2.5% increases, and the teachers getting 5 to 7% increases. That's inequitable. At a minimum, it's inequitable.
So I don't want to get into all those numbers now, because you know, you're adding numbers that I don't think are fair to add together. We have approximately 2/3 of our teachers don't see a step increase. So you're throwing that number out there as if they're all getting. Again, I don't want to get into the details, because this is the Board of Selectmen meeting.
Let's have one person at a time, please.
This is the Board of Selectmen meeting, and I don't think that's a conversation to be had in the middle of the Board of Selectmen meeting. I mean, if we want to have it, we can by all means have it, but I don't
No, I think
this
it's
is the right
going on long enough.
spot to have it, right. My only point was that I don't think it's a given that there's going to be whatever dollar increase, whatever number's been thrown out there, there's no guarantee on that. That was my only point in making my comment. And I apologize, I'm not feeling well tonight, so I'm a little
Sure.
foggy.
We thank you for your comments. I thank everyone for your comments. Thank you for coming tonight. And we needed the discussion, and we have a ways to go. We have things to resolve. Thank you. Okay. We'll move on to old business number 1. We have an update on the fire station and police station addition project, and unfortunately David was called away on a family problem. National Grid moved the gas line, so now the contractor can start working on the excavation of the foundations. The contractor has started working on the roadway, which will provide access to the ball fields, if good weather continues. They are expecting to finish it during the first week in April. Hopefully, April will arrive next week. Oh, I hope so. The contractor is also working on the stormwater infiltration basin. That work should be completed by next week. Okay, tonight is a very interesting date. 3 weeks from today is the start of the Pine Grove School renovation on Monday, April 16th, Patriots Day, will be the beginning of the project. And we will see a lot of work being done, a generator put in, wiring will start, and a lot of great things will happen to the school. And I think we'll be very happy with it. I personally been very involved with it, and I think I look at it and I keep saying to myself, how in the world can we afford all of that? And they're saying, look at what we're getting for our $39 million. And I think the architects have done a really great job on that, in the design of the renovation. So I'm looking forward to it getting started on the 16th of April. I know that teachers are starting to get things all packaged up, and we're lucky enough to have a building that's big enough so that we could move the classes around in different phases so that we can renovate one. We have 3 wings to the school, and we can move people from one wing to another wing on different floors, and so that we can get all of the renovations done. And the target is to be finished for September of 2019. And it's going to take a lot of work, but I think we'll be very happy with it. So, we have fiscal year 19 budgets. We have Whittier Voc Tech, and we have an increase in the number of students at Whittier for the coming school year, and so we have an increase in our assessment from Whittier for $43,599. We have to approve that
Well,
the
that's the
budget line?
number that we're putting in the budget.
That's
the estimate that I got.
right. Well, do we take a vote on?
Just take a
this?
vote to include it in the budget, that's fine.
Okay.
Make a motion, Mr. Chairman, we accept the Whittier Voc budget.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the Whittier Voc budget for fiscal year, the budget increase for fiscal year 19. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And we have the Finance Committee budget. And the increase is 2.3%, which meets the guidelines.
Give you a motion, Mr. Chairman, to accept the Finance Committee budget.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the Finance Committee budget. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Where am I? Okay, new business. appointments. We have a seasonal liquor license renewal submitted by Rowley Golf Course LLC. It's the time of the year for seasonal liquor license renewals. There is only one seasonal license holder in town, and that is the Rowley Golf Course. The renewal application is in order and requires the approval of the Board of Selectmen. The applicant is current on all taxes, water, and light bills. If approved, there is nothing that the board needs to sign tonight. The liquor license will be prepared and available in the Selectmen's office tomorrow for the Selectmen to sign. Motion?
I give you that motion to, for the seasonal renewal of the license for the Rowley Golf Course.
Second.
I just have a question. Have we had any reports from residents in the area about noise or anything like
I
that?
don't remember any.
Haven't heard.
We haven't had any, right?
No, not that I know. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the seasonal liquor license renewal for the Rowley Golf Course. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And new business number 2, review special town meeting and annual town meeting warrant and ballot questions.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just guide you through this is a very rough draft. We're still having some legal reviews
Okay.
done on some of these items. So if you want to start the beginning on this, we have our standard articles, and our standard article number 3, which includes this year that shellfish commissioner stipend.
Are you still special?
I'm using the annual first, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So if you can see,
Oh, okay.
I
Yes,
just want,
yes.
we'll look at this further next
Right,
week.
right.
So that's the only change there.
That's a stipend
Correct.
for the shellfish, yep.
The next article is the budget article. It's not in there. That's where it is. It's in Excel right now. It's not placed into Word. The following article, this is the article that we've been working on, Article 5 on the override. And I was presumptuous by saying inserted by the Board of Selectmen, but actually that needs to be approved tonight.
To insert that into
So
the
if
warrant.
you could call for a motion to open the annual town meeting warrant, vote to place this article in, and vote to close it.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to open the warrant.
The annual town meeting.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to open the annual town meeting warrant. All those in favor say aye.
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 Would you place the article, please?
I make a motion to place on Article 5 to appropriate the sum of $532,640.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve Article 5 for the annual town meeting warrant. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So that would be, that
And
get
vote to
correct.
close the warrant, please.
And the
Excuse me.
inserted by
Make
the
a,
Board of
make a
Selectmen.
motion to close the warrant, annual town meeting warrant.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to close the annual town meeting warrant. All those in favor say aye.
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 Article 6 is the water department budget, which you've already approved. Including Article 7. Article 8 is all the budget articles that were part of that, part of the budget. So the water department has various transfers to fund capital items, and their funding source is from an article they had from May 2016 for a purchase and installation of a dehumidification system for the water treatment plant that is, they've determined is no longer needed. So they're using that balance, which was about $376,000, I believe, to fund various capital expenditures on both the annual and the special. We have a member of the water board here this evening if you have any questions, but these were all in your budget package that you looked at a couple of weeks ago. Article 12, 13 14 and 15 are the standard annual articles that are voted on under consent motion. We have every year. Article 16 is the annual revolving fund, chapter 44, E1/2.
I'm sorry, are there questions permitted?
This is in a public hearing, you would need to address that through the chairman.
Do we have time for a question about the water department dehumidifier?
Well, we have a member of the water board, so.
So, I remember voting on that. I want to say it was around the time we voted in the fire department and police department, the year before last, or last
Are you
year.
talking about the water
Dehumidifier
treatment plant?
system? Right,
Okay.
right. So, the dehumidifier system was close to $400,000.
Correct.
Now it's no longer needed, and the water department wants to reallocate that budget as opposed to give it back to the town. Is that correct? Or other needs?
Essentially, that's, well, it doesn't go back to the,
Yeah.
it doesn't go back to the town. The funds are actually the water department's funds because of the way the water department is set up. So the funds can't be given back to the town. They can be given back to the ratepayers in terms of a lowering of the rates, and that's the plan. But it can't be moved from, at least my understanding is it can't be moved from the water department can't give money to the town.
Okay, so that's,
They operate under an enterprise fund, so it's not tied to the taxes. Some municipalities may actually fund their water department off their property tax, but cities and towns have the opportunity to have an enterprise fund, which is a self-supporting, almost like a large revolving fund in a way, cash in and cash out, cash basis kind of accounting. So it's not within the town's budget that we were talking about earlier with funding the school.
understood, all right. So the only reason I bring it up is because it was a sizable request for a very specific need. And so irrespective of where the money goes and where it stays and so on, and I think most people would say in Raleigh our rates are high relative to surrounding communities.
They are the highest in the state.
There you go. So I think it begs a little bit of discussion about where that freed up capital goes. And I know this isn't the time for it, but.
Well, so just the mechanics, as I understand the mechanics, there are two ways we can operate. One is, because we didn't spend the money in the article, the dehumidification plant, that can be voted back into the water department stabilization fund. So that goes back into like a reserve fund. And then you have to come up with a whole another set of articles to then take the money out, because we also have ongoing capital requirements, like the finding where the valves are for the water tank. That's kind of a fairly important step, as well as the replacement of the pickup truck on a 10-year committed schedule, and the most important thing is the reconditioning of wells number 3 and number 5 that are located up by the water treatment plant, which are not in danger of failing, but it's harder and harder to pump the water because the screens that are associated with the pumps are all clogged with iron and manganese and the biologics that are associated with that iron and manganese. So those things absolutely do need to be done. So it's really an accounting shuffle more than anything else. Behind the question that though I assume is we made collectively, the water board made a mistake in not pursuing rigorously enough the need for the dehumidification. It wasn't just the water board, engineers had come in and they said you need to do this. And there was clear safety and hazardous conditions in the water treatment plant itself. So something needed to be done. But nobody had figured out what the problem was, which was we ultimately had. So.
I appreciate the answer, and I think it's, my question originated less in terms of you know, Monday morning quarterbacking why the need was articulated, but clearly the town funded the need as stated, correct?
No, the town agreed for the water department to spend its money. So it's a little more
Does the
Byzantine.
town fund the water department?
No,
No.
How,
The rate-
the water
the
rates
rate-
fund the
water
water
rates.
department.
okay, but our rates are the highest in the state.
Yes.
Okay.
But not by us, and again, because I want to be completely open, not by a small amount. Our rates are triple the average in the state.
Okay.
It's
So-
a total embarrassment. If you want to run for the water department, by all means, join in. We need all the help we can get.
I've done a lot of things wrong in my life.
One more won't matter.
We're all looking to free up capital and use it in the smartest way possible, and I think, you know, I would be interested in having that discussion at the appropriate time.
Please come to there'll be hearings on water rates in the next couple of months.
Thank you.
Yeah, it is a different type of situation where we set the budgets here to run the town, but they set the budgets, and then they have to set their rates to collect enough money to pay, their income must match their expenditures.
Bernie, is there a meeting tomorrow night?
There is a meeting tomorrow.
Meeting tomorrow at 6 o'clock, right?
Yes.
It's not on the-
That's a,
Sorry?
Is what to do with that capital on the agenda?
All the capital expenditures that we are proposing for this coming year have been put in as warrant articles.
Okay, thank you.
okay. Yep,
Okay, so we were looking at the revolving fund renewals. There's been no changes to those. Those are now set under bylaw pursuant to a state law that was passed last year under the Municipal Modernization Act. I'm still working on the following article. That's to appropriate funds from the PEG Access account, the Raleigh Community Media account, to operate that department. The next article is the Water Pollution Abatement Trust Septic Loan Program, standard article, same amount of the appropriation for that, which is the town's debt service for that low-interest loan program for Raleigh residents. Then we have the annual community preservation appropriation. Then we follow into an article that the treasurer requested, which is to accept Mass General Law, Chapter 59, Section 57A, which makes property tax bills of $100 or less payable in a single installment. And that actually just cuts down on the processing of small property tax bills. Article 21 is the article that the Selectmen had asked to be placed on the warrant to accept the provisions of Chapter 64G, Section 3A, to establish a room occupancy excise. We discussed this earlier, with some of the attendees in the meeting. And so we don't have any estimates on that because we only have one opportunity, and that's the hotel that's currently under construction. So we did reach out to the DOR data bank on that. So there's no way to come up with an estimate just yet. But that would be a 6% excise on a hotel room. The next one is the acceptance of General Laws, Chapter 64L, Section 2, to establish a local option meals excise. So that would be an additional 0.75% added on to what the state charges, the 6.25% meals tax. And I came up with an example in the explanatory note that basically says, if you spend $1.50 for a cup of coffee, it'd be about a cent. And a $15 pizza would be 11 cents. And the DOR is estimating would bring in about $100,000. We think it could actually be a little bit more than that.
really.
Because anything, even at Market Basket, that you buy that's prepared and warm, ready to eat, there's a meals tax added on. Not if you go and buy a can of soup. There is
Right.
no tax, but
Right.
actually if you buy the prepared foods that, so
Right.
You have to think about it in that context.
Well, Georgetown got 88,000 last year, if I recall, so I think we'll get at least
There's a number of,
half that probably.
yeah, there are a number of restaurants in the town that do very well business, especially in the summertime, between the boaters and the tourists and the flea markets in the area. I think that the town really could realize a substantial amount of revenue from this.
And if we move the border about 2 miles south, we'd make even more.
Okay.
So, that was an article that you had wanted. Now, the next one, I need the board to actually vote to open the warrant and remove this article. The Shellfish Constable was looking to amend the bylaws to increase the fine for offenders, most specifically out-of-town clammers who are clamming in the Rowley Flats. And he wanted to raise the fine threshold to $800 and $500. And there's a state law that caps fines at $300, and that's what's written in the bylaw.
Make a motion to open up the annual town meeting warrant.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to open the annual town meeting warrant. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye. Make a motion to delete the Article 23 on the annual town warrant.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to delete Article 23. All those, no, delete that article.
To withdraw it. It's,
Withdraw
it's, the Shellfish Constable is away right now.
Okay.
I should say the old Article
The
23
old
dealing
Article
with
23, because
shellfish.
that's we
Okay.
don't want to eliminate 23. Okay, to delete the article, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And to close.
Make a motion to close the annual town meeting warrant.
Second.
Motion to close, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And the last two articles are the transfers for the retiree health insurance trust fund that the auditors say must be funded every year, and a transfer to the stabilization fund.
How much will this bring us up to in the stabilization?
I believe we're at $1,025,000, so this would be
What-
$50,000 over that. if-
Okay, $1,075,000, which is very important for debt reasons and to borrow money for the town to have.
It's the rainy day fund
Yes,
for
the
the
rainy
town,
day
so
fund.
if you have a $17 million budget,
Yep.
this is what the auditors are recommending.
Yep.
Okay. And like I said, this is still a draft. Next week, we'll review it further.
And the
We can go into this.
offices that we will be voting on are Article
Yeah,
25.
so that's the ballot, and we have received that from the town clerk, and this is the ballot question that must be approved, the wording, the final wording at next week's meeting, so that it can be submitted, and that would be for, at this point, shall the town of Raleigh be allowed to assess an additional $532,640 in real estate and personal property taxes for the purpose of funding the assessment for the Triton Regional School District for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2018.
So that takes care of the annual.
Okay, and then, moving to the special, standard articles, 1 and 2. Article 3, I need to find funds to pay for the town meeting, so, at this point, we have no unemployment claims being paid for out of the, unemployment line in the town budget. So, that will be the revenue source for that. Article 4, and most of this is for housekeeping things that need to be done in this fiscal year. This is our opportunity to do that. There was not a fall town meeting, so a lot of this just allows us to settle these accounts that need to be done. Article 4, we participate in the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission's pictometry program, so we have a charge of $4,868 that needs to be paid. Article 5, we're looking for funds to supplement the library door opener appropriation from last year. There was not enough funds to actually do that project because we have paid prevailing wage rates. Article 6, the police chief is seeking $3,800 to cover the cost to send a new police officer to the academy. We had a retirement, and this is the position that the new officer needs to go to the full-time academy this spring. The police chief also needs $1,836.57 to fund some shortfalls in the E911 grant fund. Article 8 funds the contractual requirements of years 1 and 2 of the Mass Cops Local 360 Police Union contract. And that's, like I said, some of these are still being reviewed. Article 9 is the appropriation of $50,000 to be used by the tree warden for public shade tree cutting and maintenance. There's been many public shade trees that have been identified as being weak or sick, and there's a concern of falling branches or trees. The next article funds the shortfall I have in having the landfill test wells monitored, $4,445. This is a requirement that the town has to get those landfill test wells monitored, and I don't have enough funds. So going forward, this will be in the budget now instead of having it in an article. Article 11, so what we have a number of just town capital items, an assortment of things, and what we've done in working with Treasurer Karen Summit, looking at repurposing some balances of prior articles. So the dollar amounts are kind of funny when you look at them because they're balances, and they may be funded within these articles, or they may be funded actually elsewhere. They're going to be piecemealed together to cover the cost. So the first one is that new security system that we were talking about for the town hall and the annex. So we're looking at some balances, and these have been reviewed by the bond council, so all the bond attorneys and the financial advisors have looked at these. So we're taking it from a balance here, the town hall handicap ramp and entry in the police HVAC system. So there's some borrowing monies where there was unexpended balances. The next one is $4,532.38, which is also a balance of another HVAC system article, and that will go for the town hall security, the annex security system. $10,000, the next one, to pay for the cost of repairing and repaving the town launch ramp, and that will be coming as well out of an HVAC system and annex handicap door. The next article is $3,967.62, so that's coming out of that police HVAC article, and that funds goes towards the purchase and replacement of the carpet in this office. The next one is repurposing $8,500 to pay for the cost of repairing and replacing garage door lifts and panels at the highway department garage. And that's coming from that police HVAC balance. Following article is $2,723.29 for the purchase of a trailer for the Harbor Master's 21-foot Boston Whaler patrol boat. And that's going to be put together from a number of balances of police defibrillators. There was $47 left, a highway sander, there was $765.12, and there was a balance in the utility tractor of $1,910.77. We haven't written any explanatory notes yet on these, but we just got them back today from the bond attorney. Article 17 is the capital article for this year. So we are looking at $87,500 for technology upgrades, and that goes from purchasing, installing computers, software programs, portable radios, And that all goes through the following departments: treasurer, collector, selectmen, health, accounting, fire department, library, and police department. And the IT department, our IS consultants are the ones that work on that one. They have a replacement program, their computers and things. Then we have $32,600 for facilities upgrades, which also includes the balance of the selectman's office carpet, new hardware for the town hall handicap door, and for painting the town hall cupola and trim. We've had somebody point out that there's been some, need for repair and painting of the cupola.
Yes.
And then there's also some trim around the building that's in need of paint.
Definitely.
So we're looking to get that done next fiscal year. And the third component of the capital is $36,400 for the purchase of departmental equipment, which includes the balance for the trailer for the harbor master patrol boat, a line painter for the highway department, new furniture and window treatments for the council on aging, and protective clothing for the fire department. Okay, the
Is
next.
that redundant from 16? Pay the cost of purchasing a trailer for the harbor masters?
That's, yes, so that funds a portion of it. It cleans
Oh,
up those
okay.
3 little article balances, so we can offset the cost and get it down.
It's not the full cost of the trailer in 16, it's only partial.
The water department, free cash article that Mr. Cullen was speaking about, these are on the specials, the articles that you saw that were in his budget package. He had also had his special town meeting articles. So he's transferring their unexpended, essentially what was closed on the books as unexpended and unappropriated funds, and putting that into the stabilization account. The next one is also another of his capital items that's coming from the water treatment plant dehumidification system, the $90,000 for the cleanings of wells 3 and 5. Then he has an article for seeking $22,000 for from that dehumidification article for the purpose of purchasing and installing an HVAC system at their administrative office at 401 Central Street. The original appropriation of $18,000 was found to not be sufficient. I think they've attempted several bids on that, and there's no one bidding on that, because the cost is actually a lot more. They also
So we
have,
got bids, but all the bids were above
well,
what the
exactly.
amount of money that we had, so.
They can't do the project. The next article is $20,000 coming out of that water treatment plant dehumidification system, the installation of water treatment plant process pipes. And I think this is actually is one of the reasons why they don't need the dehumidification system. If they found that if they insulate the pipes, I think it mitigates the humidity in the treatment plant. The next article just seeks funds to transfer funds out of that PEG access for this fiscal year, PEG access account, and puts it into the PEG access budget. As you remember, last year we were required to do that. And this is going to fund the cost of legal work that we're doing for the renewal of the Verizon franchise license, and we'll also be starting to look at the Comcast. Article 23 was submitted by the Community Preservation Committee, so that when the actual state match comes in, they don't know, they're estimating, just like we just looked at for fiscal 19, the actual numbers come in. So this article, I guess, sort of recalibrates all those lines with the actual amount of the state match. The next article is a transfer out of the Community Preservation Act for $9,700 for to be used by the Conservation Commission to build a boardwalk on the Pingree Farm Conservation Area.
On your explanatory notes, was that year correct, 2002?
That came from the conservation agent.
Okay.
So that's been a goal, I believe, going
Oh,
back
the-
to a land management plan
All right.
back in 2002 to have this boardwalk constructed. The next article is a revote of the November 2016 article on the Mahaffey Farm conservation restriction. So since that time, there's been a new plan developed. You heard a presentation last week from Vanessa Johnson of Greenbelt on this. So we've been working with her and on the language in this article, and I know the chairman has been very involved in securing a parking lot, which would be 4 parking spaces and a path. So it's not just protected, the public has a way to use this land. So this needs to be revoted due to the fact that the plan had changed from the June 30th, 2016 plan that was referenced in that November 14th, 2016 article, to the new plan, which has the path, which has the parking lot. And there may be some other revisions. She's been working with the owners of the property on that plan, but you've seen that plan last week. The next article is the article we discussed about having the town hall windows project be completed, and the Community Preservation Committee last week voted to authorize funds to finish that project. So those are the last 5 windows here. That's $18,377. The following article is the coming out of community preservation, which has been approved by them, $229,668 for phase 1 of the annex elevator project, which is a complete handicap accessibility upgrade to the first floor of that building, which the Architectural Access Board says in order to install an elevator there, you have to do all of those upgrades. I know you've heard that presentation in the past from the architects, but this area, as we discussed in past meetings, houses the senior center, and the idea is to get that first floor as handicap accessible as possible, because the predominant department on that first floor is the Council on Aging. The next article is, once again, a Community Preservation Committee sponsored article for the $54,000 for the handicap ramp at the town hall. And I know Mr. Peterson's discussed that in the past, that ramp does need to be replaced. The next article is something that came up a few meetings ago. The conservation agent met with the selectmen and discussed the parcels W and X on Meadows Lane. They were identified on a subdivision plan from the Meadows at Stony Brook, that they had been listed as conservation, though they weren't actually in the subdivision approval. The Conservation Commission sent a letter to the selectmen a few weeks ago saying that they would like to make those parcels protected as Article 97 conservation land. So in order to do that, he needs to have this article, which he's already had reviewed by the town attorney. Article 30 is a zoning bylaw amendment being sponsored by the planning board, and this is on those large-scale photovoltaic installations. Mr. Pierce is here, he can explain it if there's any questions, but they've worked really hard on that with the town attorney. And then the following one is,
What is a large scale?
Solar farm.
Yeah,
Well, there's a definition of that, a very specific definition of the
Okay.
bylaw. Offhand, I think offhand, I can't remember. I think
Okay.
it's like more than 0.5 megawatts.
Oh, okay.
But don't quote
But
me.
there is, but there is a
definite, yeah,
specification.
right.
Okay.
45 megawatts?
Huh?
45 megawatts?
No, I said 0.5.
Oh.
But that may not be right either, so. But there is a definition, and you have to go look at the definition.
8 times what the town uses.
It would be a good thing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
It will be good from 10 to 2 in the afternoon.
It's that thing that glows outside.
Okay, Deb.
okay, the next one is the marijuana zoning bylaw. And so the town of Rowley, at the statewide referendum, voted for the recreational marijuana. And because the town did that, that had repercussions on how each municipality sets this up. Right now, we need this zoning bylaw, which will really direct any retail, recreational retail marijuana in the retail district, and then any marijuana businesses relating to cultivation or testing into the business light industry. It would be a factory, no other than other factories. They would all be issued, regulated through special permitting, which sets a pretty high standard on how a permit is granted. There's public hearings, notification to abutters, there's engineering reviews and other types of reviews, and Mr. Pierce can explain that. So this bylaw needs to pass. It requires 2/3 vote at town meeting, because if it doesn't, then they can go anywhere in town. We were initially told that we also needed a ballot question, and Town Council Tom Mullen had a second conversation with the Attorney General's office, and the second one, they agreed that we would need it if we were allowing it, because that's what the town voted for. We're allowing it in zoning districts that are real, that have ability for businesses to go into, and the permitting process is not, is such that it's a fair and open process. So they said we didn't need the ballot question.
So that really needs to be explained in the footnote.
Well, it's not even on here because we don't need it. We were just doing the research on this.
Okay, but I mean, if we want to put it in a specific,
Well, no, it's in the bylaw.
Well, she's talking about at the vote.
I'm talking about a ballot question.
Ballot question,
We
right.
don't need that.
We don't need the
I did-
ballot question.
I did
But-
inform the board, I passed along, communication on that, but just in case you forgot. This clearly, in this explanatory note, shows where district it would go in. So if it's not passed and people don't really understand it,
right,
they would be able to go anywhere. So I think.
that's what I mean, it needs to be clear.
If you don't
in
have the zoning, they can go anywhere.
Right.
The next article is not a zoning article, actually, and I do need the Board of Selectmen to vote to open the special town meeting warrant to place this article on and to close it, and it's for the local sales tax on the marijuana.
I have a couple questions about the substance of it. All right, I'll do it now. This it appears to apply the tax only on retailers. What about cultivators? Because I think
I thought it
we can
did.
tax cultivators as well. Well,
I thought we had talked about that.
well,
I
it's
just know you can't tax it on medical marijuana. We got a
On medical
clarification
marijuana,
today, but
okay.
no,
on
but
retail.
cultivators of
Cultivators. I thought-
recreational marijuana. So this provides for a local sales tax upon the sale of marijuana by a marijuana retailer operating within the town. And so it doesn't really seem to apply the tax to cultivators, and I wouldn't really raise the issue except that we actually have someone who's proposing to
Right.
cultivate recreational marijuana in the town. So it seems to me we ought to,
Thought
if
that
it's permitted by state law, which I think it is, we ought to apply it to cultivators.
If you could vote to place this on the article, and then I'll make it subject to any changes that the town council gives me. This came from him, I'll go back to him and
Okay.
and
Make
ask
a
about
motion
that.
to open a town warrant.
Special town meeting.
Second.
Your special town meeting warrant. Make a motion.
Motion is made and seconded
Seconded.
to open. All those in favor say aye.
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 And what article is that? That is,
To place the article, I would just say, look, because they may be renumbered, local
Okay.
sales tax on the marijuana.
Can I ask one more question about it, substantive question?
Yes.
It says that provided the tax shall not exceed 3%, why don't we just make it 3%? 3% is a limit, why don't we just say it's at 3%?
I'd have to ask him because that language came from him, and he may be referencing the wording from, as prescribed by 64N, section 3.
Unless
I'm not
maybe
sure.
after this is authorized, the selectmen sets the rate, or maybe
That
that's...
very well could
that's
be in
possible.
this.
make a motion to place this marijuana article on the special town meeting warrant.
Yeah, the
For-
marijuana sales tax.
Sales tax.
Retail sales tax.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
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 Make a motion to close the special town meeting warrant.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to close the special town meeting warrant. Bernie?
Is the issue with the word retail, can't we just eliminate the word retail and just say sales tax, pending any subsequent clarification?
My
Well, I
language
think-
says local sales tax upon the sale or transfer of marijuana or marijuana products by a marijuana retailer operating with the town. So
It's
I
legal.
think- Huh? I think we should ask Tom
Yeah.
whether we can tax cultivators as well, and see how he would like to
Yes.
address it.
I thought for some reason, we talked about one meeting, somebody came in and talked about cultivating it in,
They did.
yeah, and
We do
and
have
I thought the
somebody.
sales tax applied to that.
Yeah, I
think
thought
we-
I read that
I thought
somewhere,
so.
Did you?
Let me confirm if the wording as presented here also covers cultivation.
This is so new, you know.
Yeah, right,
Right.
no,
Just
yeah.
wanna
Right.
make
And the
sure we.
Yeah.
the zoning on this, the marijuana stuff has completely upended everything. It's really not, it's contrary to the traditional
Yes.
principles that everyone is used to on zoning, so.
Right.
Yes.
It is very new.
It's been an experience and a lot of work that's been done by Kurt Baker. The next zoning bylaw was something Kurt and I kind of looked at and went back to town council on. This is going back to a current bylaw, the registered marijuana dispensaries, the RMDs, which were for medical to begin with when this all started. And this is we're striking a not-for-profit under the definition of registered marijuana dispensary because we found that that's no longer required under Mass Department of Public Health. So that's kind of to clean up that language.
So this will now apply to both nonprofit and for-profit marijuana facilities.
Yeah.
And that's, so we're trying to keep up with what the state is doing because things are moving fairly quickly. And that's it.
If it's free, there's no sales tax.
That's it?
That's it, okay.
So if you have any questions, contact me. We're still working on all of this. It's a very rough draft.
So you would appreciate like an email or something pointing, if we see a problem?
If you see
pointing-
something, call me. And we have, we're still, of course, we're still proofreading. But
Yeah.
if there's something, we'll have next week, we'll go through this in a little bit more detail. And hopefully all our legal reviews will be done as well. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Yeah, they would appreciate the input, so that, any help. Okay, we're all set? Announcements. The Friends of the Council on Aging is sponsoring a shoe drive during the month of April at the Town Hall Annex, 39 Central Street. Paired footwear, such as the following, may be deposited in the container at the Annex parking lot. Shoes, boots, work boots, sandals, slippers, flip-flops, heels, sneakers, pocketbooks, purses, backpacks, and belts. Information on the Pine Grove School project is available on the town's website at www.townofraleigh.net. The town meeting is scheduled for Monday, April 30th, 2018, at 7 p.m. in the Pine Grove School Gymnasium. Notice the change, this town meeting is scheduled for April 30th, 2018, 7 p.m. in the Pine Grove School Gymnasium. The town has the following vacancies: fence viewer, 3 positions; wood, lumber, and bark inspector; zoning board of appeals associate, 3 seats; parks and recreation committee, 1 seat; and deputy shellfish constables, 2 positions. For more information on these positions, please contact the Selectmen's office at 948-2372. The Raleigh Food Pantry is in need of donations. Donations can be left at the Raleigh Public Library. The food pantry is open on Tuesdays from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and on Thursdays from 5:30 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Give me a motion to adjourn, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you all for attending.